It started with one kiss. Not a romantic one. Not the kind you dream about. It was the kind that changes everything. The kind that burns a name into a city's memory. Her name was Elena Rossi. She wasn't anyone special, at least not before that night. She painted on weekends, served coffee during the week, and lived quietly in a small apartment in downtown New York. But fate doesn't knock. It barges in wearing a black suit and a dangerous smile. His name was Luca Moretti, the man whose name made powerful people go silent. He was the kind of man you didn't meet by accident, yet somehow, that's exactly how Elena met him. That night, the city was glittering under rain and noise. A charity gala at the plaza. A world she didn't belong to, but had entered anyway, carrying a tray and wearing a borrowed smile. She told herself it was just another shift, just another paycheck, until one man grabbed her wrist. Too hard, too long. The room kept laughing. The music kept playing. But her heartbeat turned into thunder. And then, it happened. The air shifted. Silence swept through the hall like a shadow. Luca Moretti stood there, calm, composed, eyes cold enough to freeze every whisper. He didn't say a word. He just walked up, looked at the man holding her, and then, without hesitation, he pulled Elena into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't tender. It wasn't soft. It was a declaration. In that one reckless act, he claimed her in front of everyone who mattered. When he pulled away, the world exhaled, and every flashbulb in the room went off. Reporters, socialites, enemies, all watching. And Luca said only 2 words, steady and low, "She's mine." By morning, her face was everywhere. Tabloids, TV, social media. Unknown girl caught in Mafia scandal. The kiss that stopped New York. Elena tried to hide, but how do you hide from a man like him? He found her anyway, standing by the East River 3 nights later, staring at the water like it might wash her life clean. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just said, "You think I ruined your life? But I just made you untouchable." She wanted to scream, to run, to forget. But his voice, his presence, it felt like gravity. Dangerous, inescapable, pulling her closer every time she tried to break free. Soon, her quiet world was gone. She was living inside his shadow, where love feels like war, and every kiss tastes like a secret. Now, the whole city knows her name. But only she knows the truth, that one kiss was never about love. It was about power, control, and a man who never lets go of what he claims. And whether she loves him or hates him doesn't matter anymore, because in Luca Moretti's world, she already belongs to him. It started with one kiss. Not the romantic kind, not the one you dream about. It was the kind that changes everything, that burns a name into a city's memory. Her name was Elena Rossi. She wasn't anyone special, not before that night. She painted on weekends, served coffee during the week, and lived quietly in a tiny apartment downtown. But fate doesn't knock politely. It barges in, wearing a black suit and a dangerous smile. His name was Luca Moretti, the man New York whispered about. Mafia blood, power in his silence, sin in his smile. He was the kind of man you don't meet by accident. And yet, that's exactly how Elena met him. That night, the city glittered under rain and noise. A charity gala at the plaza. A world she didn't belong to, but had entered anyway, carrying a tray, wearing a borrowed smile. She told herself it was just another shift. Just another paycheck until one man grabbed her wrist too hard. Too long, the room kept laughing, but her heartbeat turned to thunder. And then it happened. The air changed. Luca Moretti appeared, calm, composed, eyes cold enough to stop time. He didn't speak. He just walked forward, took her by the arm, and kissed her in front of everyone. It wasn't gentle. It was a declaration, a claim, a warning. When he pulled away, the room exhaled, and every camera flash followed them like lightning. 2 words left his mouth. Steady final was never about love. It was about power, control, and a man who never lets go of what he claims. Because in Luca Moretti's world, she already belongs to him. Luca Moretti wasn't supposed to care. Men like him didn't feel. They commanded, they controlled, they conquered. But ever since that night, the night he kissed her, something inside him refused to stay quiet. He told himself it was protection. He told himself it was strategy. But when he saw her face on every news headline, he didn't see a liability. He saw the only thing he wanted to keep. Elena couldn't sleep. The city felt different now, like every shadow knew her name. Reporters camped outside her door. Strangers stared at her like she was a scandal in human form. She used to love New York's noise. Now it only echoed his voice. She's mine. Those words wouldn't leave her head. Not because she believed them, but because the way he said them sounded like truth. 3 nights later, she found him waiting near the river. He stood there, black coat, cigarette between his fingers, the city lights burning behind him like fire. "I didn't ask for this," she said, her voice shaking. He looked at her once, slow, deliberate. "You didn't have to," he said. "I already decided." He told her the man who grabbed her that night belonged to a rival family. He told her she wasn't safe anymore. And that, by kissing her, he made sure no one else could touch her. She didn't know if that was protection or possession. Elena wanted to hate him, but every time she looked at him, the danger, the control, the quiet way he spoke her name, it didn't feel like fear. It felt like gravity. Weeks passed. She stopped painting. She stopped going out, and then one night his car showed up outside her apartment. "Pack your things," he said. She didn't ask where they were going. She just did. The mansion was cold, silent, endless. Guards in every hallway, power in every corner. He gave her a room with tall windows and a lock on the inside. "Just until it's safe," he said. But nothing about him ever felt safe. Soft tone, heartbreak plus pull. He'd visit her sometimes. Late nights. No words, just the quiet kind of presence that filled the air like smoke. He told her stories about his father, about the wars that built his name, about loyalty paid for in blood. And somehow, she listened. She shouldn't have, but she did. One night she asked, "Why me?" He looked at her, eyes darker than the sky outside. "Because you didn't flinch," he said. "The night I kissed you, you looked at me like I was still human." That was the first time she realized, beneath the violence, beneath the power, he was lonely. And somehow that made him even more dangerous. The city kept talking. Whispers turned into rumors. Enemies started circling, and through it all, he kept her close, like she was both his weakness and his weapon. Now the whole city knows her name. They call her the Mafia boss's girl. The kiss that started a war, the secret that changed New York. But Elena knows something the city doesn't. That kiss wasn't just a scandal. It was a sentence, a promise that can't be undone. Because when Luca Moretti claimed her, it wasn't just for a night. It was forever. And in his world, forever always comes with a price. Luca Moretti had a way of making a room go quiet. People said it was because of his money, or the stories about the things he had done. But it was simpler than that. He never hurried. He never raised his voice. When he looked at someone, they listened. That night at the gala, Elena didn't know who he was. She only noticed the change in the air. The laughter softened. The music slowed. And every conversation seemed to wait for his next move. He crossed the floor like he owned it. Maybe he did. From where she stood, holding a tray of champagne glasses, she saw the details first. The black suit, the faint scar at his jaw, the tattoo hidden by his cuff. He wasn't the kind of man a girl like her was supposed to notice. But she did. Luca stopped a few feet away. His attention didn't feel like attention. It felt like pressure. The man who had grabbed her wrist earlier was still talking, too drunk to see the danger he was in. Luca's eyes moved once, from the man's hand on her arm to Elena's face, and that was enough. The man let go. Elena whispered, "Thank you," but Luca didn't answer. He only looked at her. And in that moment something passed between them. Something that didn't belong to words. It was curiosity, maybe warning, maybe both. He should have walked away. She should have looked down and disappeared into the crowd. Neither of them did. Later, she would remember the faint smell of smoke on his jacket, the weight of his stare, and how everyone around them pretended not to watch. She would remember thinking, this man could ruin everything, and she would be right. For Luca, the moment felt different. He told himself it was nothing, just another face, another stranger in a city that never stopped producing them. But her eyes didn't flinch. Most people looked at him with fear or greed. She looked at him like she was trying to understand. That small act unsettled him more than any threat ever had. Because in a life built on control, recognition is the most dangerous thing of all. So when he turned away, it wasn't because he wanted to leave. It was because, for the first time in years, he didn't know what would happen next. And that uncertainty, the simple fact that one ordinary woman could make him hesitate, was the beginning of everything that would follow. The next morning, Elena told herself it had been nothing, just a strange moment at an event where she never should have been. She went back to work, poured coffee, wiped tables, and tried not to think about the man with the quiet eyes. But New York has a way of repeating the things you try to forget. 2 days later, the same black car parked across from the cafe. Tinted windows, engine running. She felt it before she saw it, the awareness that someone was watching. Luca Moretti sat inside, unreadable behind the glass. He had meant to forget her too. He had business to handle, meetings to attend, enemies to threaten. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the look she gave him at the gala. Steady, unafraid, curious. That look stayed with him like a small, stubborn ache. He told himself he just wanted to make sure she was safe. That was the excuse. The truth was harder to name. Inside the cafe, Elena felt the shift in the air when he walked in. The bell over the door chimed once. Conversations faltered. He ordered nothing. He just stood there, hands in his coat pockets, as if deciding whether to speak. When their eyes met, the noise of the city slipped away. For a few seconds, it was just the two of them, the girl who wanted to disappear, and the man who never could. "You shouldn't follow me," she said quietly. Her voice was even, but her hands trembled. "I'm not following," he replied. "I'm watching." Then he added softer, "There's a difference." She didn't understand what he meant, and maybe he didn't either. He left without another word, the door swinging shut behind him. That night, she found a single white rose on the cafe counter with no note. It shouldn't have frightened her, but it did, because it meant he wasn't finished. Luca sat in the back seat of his car, watching her through the window as the rain started again. He told himself he would stop tomorrow, that this would be the last time. But obsession doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly, in the spaces where reason used to live, and for both of them, the line between curiosity and danger was already beginning to blur. Elena didn't sleep that night. The rain kept tapping the window like it was reminding her she wasn't alone. Every time a car passed on the street below, she imagined it was the same black sedan. By morning, the white rose still lay on the counter. She almost threw it away but didn't. Something about it felt like a question she couldn't answer. At work, she moved through the day half present, smiling when people spoke, hearing none of their words. The smell of espresso, the hiss of steam, the dull clink of cups, everything ordinary, yet nothing felt normal anymore. When she stepped out for her break, he was there again. Luca leaned against the car, coat collar turned up against the cold. No bodyguards, no entourage, just him. He looked out of place on that quiet street, like a secret that had wandered into daylight. "I told you not to come here," she said. He didn't argue. He just studied her face, the smudge of paint still under one fingernail. "You shouldn't work in places where people forget your name," he said. She folded her arms. "Some of us don't have choices like yours." He gave a small, tired smile. "You think I have choices?" It wasn't pride in his voice. It was something else. Something she didn't expect to hear from a man like him. They stood there for a long moment, while the traffic moved around them. Finally, he said, "Come with me tonight. Just dinner, no cameras." She shook her head. "People talk." "They already are," he answered. The words landed heavy. She didn't know what scared her more, the idea of being seen with him, or the thought of what would happen if she refused. He didn't press further. He only said, "I'll be outside at 8. If you come, fine. If not, I'll still make sure no one bothers you again." Then he got into the car and was gone, leaving the smell of rain and leather behind. The rest of the day crawled. Every hour she told herself she wouldn't go, but as the clock struck 8, she found herself standing at the curb, heart beating too fast, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. When the car door opened, she saw him waiting inside, quiet, expectant. For one breath she hesitated, then stepped in. As the car pulled away, the cafe disappeared behind her. She told herself it was only dinner, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. It was the beginning of something she wouldn't be able to walk away from. The restaurant wasn't the kind she had ever entered before. No sign outside, no windows. Just a plain door on a quiet street and a man in a suit who opened it without being asked. Inside, everything was low light and quiet voices. No music, no laughter. The kind of place where people spoke only in half sentences and paid in favors instead of cash. Luca led her to a small table in the corner. No menu. No waiter came to take an order. A bottle of wine appeared, and 2 glasses. He poured for her first, his movements steady, unhurried. Elena sat with her hands in her lap, unsure what to do with the silence. Finally, she said, "Why me?" Her voice sounded too loud in the still room. He looked at her for a moment before answering. "Because you didn't look away," she frowned. "That's all?" "That's everything," he said quietly. For a while, they didn't speak. He told her small things then, about growing up in Brooklyn, about the old streets that no longer existed. His words were simple, but there was something heavy underneath them, like he was always leaving out the ending of each story. When the food came, thin pasta, a piece of fish she couldn't name, he barely touched his plate. He watched her instead, as if memorizing the way she held her fork, the way she glanced toward the door every few minutes. After dinner, he walked her to the car himself. The driver wasn't there. The street was empty except for the hum of distant traffic. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I know. But now that they've seen you with me, they'll think you do." She didn't ask who they were. She could hear the weight in his voice and didn't want to know. He reached into his coat and handed her a small card with a number on it. "If anyone asks questions, call this. Don't talk to reporters. Don't talk to strangers. I don't want to be part of this," she whispered. He nodded. "You already are." For a moment, she thought he might touch her hand, but he didn't. He just stepped back, letting her get into the car first. The city lights moved across his face, breaking him into pieces, half light, half shadow. On the ride home, she held the card between her fingers and wondered when her life had stopped belonging to her. By the time the car turned onto her street, she already knew she wouldn't throw it away. And somewhere behind her, in another car that never left the block, Luca watched until her lights came on. Because control, once taken, is rarely given back. Elena woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. But when she looked toward the door, a shadow moved under the crack of light. Her breath caught. She grabbed her phone and waited. The footsteps paused, then faded away. When she finally gathered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty. Except for a single envelope taped to it. No name. Just a wax seal pressed with a rose. Her fingers trembled as she broke it open. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, clean, neat, and written in a hand that looked both elegant and dangerous. "Next time, lock your windows. Not everyone who comes looking for you will leave something behind. No signature, no threat. Just a reminder that someone had been close enough to touch her life." By the time she got to work, her mind was unraveling. She kept replaying every sound, every glance. Even the regulars at the cafe looked different now. Too curious, too quiet. When her shift ended, She walked home instead of taking the subway. The night air was cold, biting at her skin, but she needed the noise of the city to drown her thoughts. Halfway down Lexington, she saw it. A black car parked across from her building. Same make, same tinted windows, her heart raced. She crossed the street, pretending not to notice, but the door opened just as she reached her steps. Luca stepped out. No coat this time, just his black shirt, sleeves rolled up, tattoos visible in the glow of a streetlight. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice cracked more than she wanted it to. "I told you they'd start watching," he replied. "I'm making sure it's me they see, not someone else." She folded her arms. "You think that's comforting?" "No," he said quietly. "But it's the truth." They stood there in silence while the city moved around them. Horns, footsteps, distant sirens. He reached into his pocket, pulling out something small. "It was a key. For what?" she asked. "There's a safe house 2 blocks from here. Use it if anything feels wrong." "I'm not running away," she said. He gave her a long look, unreadable. "Then don't. But don't die proud, either." She wanted to tell him to leave, but the words caught in her throat. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted him gone. He turned to go, but before he got in the car, he said, "They're talking about you now. Every paper, every dinner table. They're calling you his weakness." Her stomach dropped. "I'm not—" He cut her off with a soft smile. "I know, but in this city, what they believe matters more than what's true." Then he was gone. Elena stood there long after the car disappeared, the key heavy in her palm. And when she finally looked up at her window, she realized someone was already standing there, watching from the dark. She didn't scream. That was the first thing that surprised her. There was someone in her apartment, someone standing by the window where she had left the curtains half open. But instead of panic, there was a strange calm. Her mind split in 2, one half cataloging details, the other refusing to believe them. The chair she'd moved in the morning, the faint scent of smoke, a glass on the counter that wasn't hers. The figure turned slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. A man in his 40s, clean-cut, expensive suit. Not Luca. He smiled, polite and hollow. "Miss Rivera," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like it wasn't hers at all. "Who are you?" She managed. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward her, every step measured, unhurried. "You've become quite the story," he said. "Every paper in Manhattan has your picture. The girl the Mafia boss kissed." He said it like a title, not a fact. "I don't want any of this," she whispered. He tilted his head. "Oh, I think you do. Everyone wants to matter. You just didn't expect the price, did you?" She backed away, hand reaching for her phone, but he noticed. He smiled again, calm, condescending. "You can call him if you want. He'll come, but that'll make it worse." Then he placed a folded newspaper on her table and turned to leave. Before he stepped out, he said quietly, "They don't come after him. They come after what he touches." The door closed. Silence followed. Elena stood there staring at the newspaper until the clock ticked past midnight. When she finally opened it, her stomach clenched. On the front page was a photograph. Luca and her outside the restaurant, his hand on her back. The headline read, "The King of New York has a queen." She felt sick. It wasn't the picture, it was what it meant. Every rival, every cop, every reporter now had her face. She wasn't anonymous anymore. She was leverage. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number." She didn't answer. A moment later, a message appeared. "You should have called me sooner." "Luca." She typed back. Someone was here. Seconds later, another message. "Don't move. I'm coming." 15 minutes later, headlights flashed through the blinds. Then his voice, low but sharp, outside the door. "Elena, open up." When she did, he stepped inside, eyes scanning the room like a wolf scenting danger. He picked up the newspaper, jaw tightening. "I told you this would happen," he said. "I didn't ask for any of this," she shot back. "No one ever does," he replied quietly. He looked at her then, not like a man looking at someone he owned, but someone he couldn't let go of even if he tried. "This city," he said, voice low, "loves to destroy what it can't control." And now, Elena, that means you. That night, sleep became impossible. Every shadow in the apartment felt like it was watching her. Every sound, pipes, footsteps, wind, made her pulse quicken. Luca didn't leave. He sat by the window, silent, one hand resting on the table beside his gun. Not hidden, not threatening, just there, a fact of who he was. Elena lay on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, pretending not to stare at him. He hadn't spoken since that last sentence. The city outside kept breathing. Sirens, laughter, tires on wet pavement. Finally, she said, "Do you ever get tired of being afraid?" He didn't look at her. "I stopped calling it fear a long time ago." "Then what do you call it?" "Instinct." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and calm. He stood, walked toward her, and for the first time since he entered, his face softened. "You should have left when I told you to," he said quietly. "And gone where?" she asked. "You think I can disappear now? My face is everywhere." He looked down at her, jaw tight. For a moment she thought he might apologize, but men like him didn't say sorry. They just tried to fix things that couldn't be fixed. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Tomorrow you'll move to another place. My people will take you." "No," she said quickly. "I'm not running again." "You don't understand how this works, Elena." "Then make me," she said, meeting his gaze. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even admiration. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. "You really don't know what you're asking." The air between them changed, thicker, charged. He was close enough that she could smell the faint trace of smoke on his shirt, the salt of rain on his skin. And for one reckless moment, she didn't think about danger or consequences. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You think everything belongs to you, even me." His answer came soft, steady. "Not everything. Just the things I can't forget." Then he stepped back. The distance returned, but the silence was different now, alive, trembling. He turned to the window again. Outside, dawn was starting to paint the buildings in silver. "When the sun comes up," he said, "someone will call you. Don't answer unknown numbers. Don't open the door for anyone but me." She almost laughed. "So now you're my bodyguard?" He didn't smile. "No, I'm the reason you need one." Then he picked up his coat, glanced at her once more, and walked out the door. Elena sat there long after he left, the echo of his presence still in the air. And for the first time, she realized that fear and desire could sound exactly the same inside your chest. Morning light spilled through the blinds like it didn't know what had happened the night before. Elena sat at the table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Luca's presence lingered in the room like smoke, faint, invisible, but impossible to ignore. Her phone buzzed at exactly 8. Unknown number. She stared at the screen until it stopped ringing, then a message. "Are you alone?" She hesitated before typing back. "Who is this?" No reply came. A knock at the door followed seconds later. 3 slow taps. Deliberate, spaced evenly, she froze. Her first thought was Luca, but something felt off. "He wouldn't knock." "Who is it?" she called out. Silence. Another 3 knocks. Her heart began to pound. She moved quietly toward the kitchen, grabbed the small knife she used for cooking, and pressed her back against the wall. Then a voice, low, calm, unmistakably male. "Miss Rivera, it's Detective Harlan. NYPD. We need to talk." She hesitated, cracked the door open just enough to see a badge. He was tall, tired-looking, his suit rumpled, a faint scar under one eye. She let him in, but not far. He scanned the room, eyes moving over everything. The untouched coffee, the folded blanket, the faint smell of cologne that wasn't hers. "You've had company," he said. Elena crossed her arms. "Is that part of the investigation?" He gave a humorless smile. "Depends on who your company is." She didn't answer. He took out a small notepad. "You know Luca Moretti?" Her stomach dropped. "Everyone in New York knows his name." "I mean personally." She turned away. "He's been around?" "Yeah," the detective said softly. "We've noticed." He placed a photo on the table. A picture of her and Luca outside the restaurant, same as the newspaper. But this one was sharper. Do you know what happened the night after this was taken? She shook her head. 2 men from a rival crew were shot outside a club in Queens. Surveillance says they followed Moretti's car that evening. They didn't make it home. Elena's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. You think I had something to do with that? I think, he said, you're the first civilian he's ever been seen protecting. And that makes you interesting. She met his gaze. I'm not part of his world. Maybe not yet. He handed her a card. When you get tired of being his secret, call me. Then he left, just as quiet as he came. Elena locked the door behind him, pressed her forehead against the wood, and exhaled shakily. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Luca. Don't talk to anyone in a suit. Too late. She looked out the window, down at the street below. The detective's car was gone, but parked in its place, like a ghost replacing another, was the same black sedan. And this time, the man behind the wheel wasn't Luca. The car didn't move for hours. It just sat there, engine off, windows tinted black like eyes refusing to blink. Elena tried to ignore it. She made coffee. She paced. She even turned on the TV for noise. But every few minutes her gaze drifted back to the street. The car was always there. By noon her nerves were shaking under her skin. She finally grabbed her jacket, stuffed her phone and keys into her bag, and told herself she wasn't going to hide anymore. The moment she stepped outside, cold air slapped her face. She started walking, fast, aimless, like someone being chased by her own thoughts. Halfway down the block, she glanced behind her. The sedan door opened. A man stepped out. Not Luca. Not the detective either. Tall, sharp suit, eyes too calm. The kind of calm that made you believe he'd done terrible things and never lost sleep over them. Elena Rivera, he called, voice smooth, polite. She froze. He smiled faintly, like her fear was a language he understood fluently. Mr. Moretti sent me, he said. Prove it. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket and held it out. His handwriting, she didn't take it. Read it. He nodded, unfolded the paper. Pack what you need. Don't argue. Something about it was wrong. Too short. Too direct. Luca's words always carried edges, hidden meanings behind calm sentences. This was flat. She took a slow step back. If he sent you, she said. What's the safe word? He blinked once. Safe word? That was all she needed. She turned and ran. The man didn't shout. He didn't chase. She heard the quiet click of a phone behind her, then the sound of a car door opening again. She turned down the nearest corner, heart hammering, lungs burning. Her phone buzzed. Luca, don't go outside. I'm 5 minutes away. Her pulse spiked. She typed back quickly. Someone said you sent them. Describe him. She typed as fast as her fingers could move. Tall, black suit, gray tie, scar above eyebrow. Don't look back, he replied. Keep walking. Right now, she obeyed. Every sound behind her felt louder than the city itself. When she turned the next corner, a black SUV cut in front of her. The door opened, and Luca stepped out. He didn't look relieved. He looked furious. He grabbed her arm, pulled her close enough that she could see the darkness behind his calm. Did he touch you? She shook her head. No, he said. I would never send anyone without warning you first, he snapped. She swallowed hard. Then who was he? He looked past her toward the street, jaw tight. Someone testing how far they can go before I make them disappear. He looked back at her then, voice lower, quieter. They found you faster than I expected, and for the first time, she saw something in him she'd never seen before. Not anger, not control, but fear. They didn't go back to her apartment. Luca didn't even ask. He guided her toward the SUV, opened the door, and waited until she was inside. The city kept moving around them, horns, sirens, chatter, but inside that car, the world had gone silent. He didn't speak for the first few minutes. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles pale. Elena watched him from the passenger seat, the city lights sliding across his face, breaking it into fragments of gold and shadow. Finally, she said quietly, Where are we going? Somewhere they can't reach you, he replied. She stared out the window. You mean somewhere I can't leave? He didn't deny it. The ride stretched on, the city thinning into empty streets and warehouses by the docks. When they stopped, she saw a building that looked abandoned. No signs, no lights, just brick and rust. Inside, though, everything changed. Marble floors, security cameras, a long hallway lined with closed doors. It wasn't a safe house. It was a fortress. Luca led her into a room at the end of the hall. It was simple. Bed, window, a small table. Too clean, too deliberate. This is temporary, he said. Until I handle what happened. She turned toward him. You mean until you kill them? He didn't flinch. Until they stop breathing. The matter-of-fact tone made her chest tighten. You talk about murder like it's logistics. He finally looked at her. Really looked. In my world it is. There was no apology in his voice. Just the truth. He started to leave, but she stopped him. Why are you doing this for me, Luca? You could have just walked away. He turned slightly, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. I could have, he said. But I didn't. You don't even know me, she pressed. He gave a small, humorless smile. You think I need to know someone to protect them? No, she said softly. I think you need a reason. He stepped closer, slow, steady. When I kissed you that night, he said, voice low. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't a game. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like a ghost. Her breath caught. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. He moved even closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. But then he stopped, inches away, refusing to cross the last line. Get some rest, he said finally. Tomorrow, you'll need your strength. She wanted to ask for what, but his expression told her not to. When he left the room, the door clicked shut behind him, not locked, but heavy enough to make her feel trapped anyway. Elena sat on the bed, staring at the window that didn't open, at the darkness outside that had no stars. For the first time, she wondered what scared her more, the people hunting her, or the man trying to save her. Elena didn't know what time it was when the voices started, muffled, somewhere beyond the thick walls. One sharp male, Luca, the other lower, angrier, unfamiliar. She moved to the door, pressed her ear against the wood. And I told you to wait, Luca said. His tone was a knife held steady. You think waiting keeps her safe? The other man growled. They already found her once, a thud, a chair scraping, then silence. When Luca finally came in, his shirt sleeve was rolled to his elbow, a streak of blood on his wrist. Whose blood is that? She asked. He closed the door behind him. Not mine. He walked to the sink, washed his hands, calm, like it was routine. Elena's voice shook. You said this was temporary. It still is. She crossed her arms. You're lying. That made him pause. He turned slowly, water dripping from his fingers. Don't accuse me of lying, Elena. I just want the truth. He studied her a long time, then leaned against the counter. The truth, he said quietly, is that I killed the man who followed you yesterday. Her breath caught. You what? He was working for someone else. Someone who thinks you're leverage. Now he's not. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, she whispered, You can't fix everything with blood. He looked up, meeting her eyes. It's the only currency the city still respects. He moved toward her then, slow, deliberate. The air thickened. I told myself I wouldn't drag you into this, he said. But you're already here. She felt her pulse race. His voice dropped lower. You should hate me. I tried, she breathed. It didn't work. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The space between them disappeared, her back against the wall, his shadow covering hers. He lifted his hand, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. I don't know what you do to me, he said. Then stop, she whispered. I can't. The distance vanished. His breath touched hers, warm, slow, dangerous. Everything felt suspended. The world outside could have burned and she wouldn't have noticed. Then, a sound, sharp, metallic, Luca froze. Somewhere below them, a door slammed open. He cursed under his breath, grabbed her wrist. "Stay behind me." She didn't ask questions this time. He drew his gun, the easy grace of someone who's done it too many times. Footsteps. More than one, moving fast. Elena's heartbeat matched them. Luca's voice turned cold again. "They found us." He looked at her once more, just a glance, but it carried every unspoken word between them. "If we make it out of this," he said, "I'm done running from you." The lights flickered, and then the first shot rang out. The first bullet shattered the quiet like glass under a hammer. It hit the far wall, sent splinters of plaster through the air. Elena ducked instinctively. Luca didn't. He moved with that predator's focus she'd seen once before, at the restaurant, when he kissed her to claim her, not to comfort her. The same precision, the same fire in his eyes. He fired twice, sharp, clean, controlled. 2 bodies dropped near the doorway. Elena pressed her hand to her mouth. She wasn't supposed to see this part of him again. The part that didn't flinch, the part that killed. When it was quiet again, she heard the soft hum of his breathing. He turned to her, gun still in hand. "We have to move." "Where?" she whispered. "Somewhere they won't find us twice." He grabbed a jacket off the chair, threw it around her shoulders, and led her toward the back stairs. Every movement was fast, sure, practiced. They slipped through the dim hallway, the flicker of emergency lights flashing red across the walls. Her voice came out small. "Who were they?" Luca didn't look back. "People who shouldn't know your name." When they reached the alley, rain hit them, cold, relentless, soaking through her hair and his white shirt. He finally stopped, glancing at her face under the neon reflection of a liquor store sign. Her lip trembled. "You said I was safe." He exhaled through his teeth, rain mixing with sweat on his jaw. "I thought you were," he said, "but I underestimated how much they want me." She blinked. "Then why are they coming after me?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "Because I made you mine in front of everyone." His words landed heavier than any bullet. "That kiss," he continued. "It wasn't just a mistake. It was a declaration. And now every enemy I've ever made knows exactly where to strike." For a second, she forgot the rain, the danger, everything. All she could hear was her heart slamming against her ribs. "So what now?" she asked. He stepped closer, his voice rough but quiet. "Now I fix what I broke." Her breath hitched. "And if you can't?" He met her gaze. "Then I burn this city before I lose you." She stared at him, the man everyone feared, the man who had the world under his thumb, standing soaked in the rain, trembling for the first time. Somewhere behind them, sirens wailed. Closer this time, he took her hand, led her into the waiting black car parked at the curb. As they pulled into the night, the city lights blurred like smears of gold and red on wet glass. Elena looked out the window, her reflection merging with the skyline. "Everyone knows my name now," she murmured. Luca's voice was soft beside her. "Let them. It's safer that way." But she could tell from the tremor in his tone. He didn't believe that. Not anymore. The car ride was silent, the kind of silence that made every heartbeat sound too loud. Elena sat with her hands clasped in her lap, eyes fixed on the city as it blurred by. Luca drove like a ghost. No music, no words, just focus. The storm followed them. When they finally stopped, it wasn't in the city anymore. It was on the edge of it, a warehouse district long abandoned, where streetlights flickered and the river's reflection looked like broken glass. He cut the engine. "This way," he said quietly. She followed him through a metal door that groaned open, revealing a space she didn't expect. Not chaos, not blood, but calm. Soft amber lights, black leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked the water. A sanctuary. Luca dropped his jacket on the couch, holstered his gun, and turned toward her. "You're safe here." Elena let out a small laugh, the kind that cracked under its own weight. "You keep saying that," she said. "And every time you do, someone dies." His jaw tightened. He didn't respond, just walked to the bar, poured 2 drinks, and handed one to her. She didn't take it. I don't want whiskey, she said softly. I want answers. He looked at her, really looked. The fire that usually lived in his eyes had dimmed. You're not supposed to be in my world, he said. But the moment I kissed you in Times Square, that choice disappeared. Elena's breath caught. Why did you do it, Luca? Why there? Why me? He set his glass down, leaned against the table, and let the truth fall out like confession. Because everyone was watching, he said. And for once I wanted something that wasn't about power. I wanted you. Her chest tightened. You don't even know who I am. I know enough, he murmured. You looked at me like I was human. For a second, the space between them was fragile. Too fragile. He took a step closer. She didn't move back. I don't regret it, he said quietly. Not the kiss. Not this. She met his gaze, voice shaking. Even if it ruins everything? His answer came without hesitation. It already did. The rain outside softened, like the city itself was holding its breath. Elena turned toward the window, arms wrapped around herself. You scare me, she said. Luca walked up behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I scare myself, he said. Every time I'm near you. He reached out, stopped an inch from touching her shoulder. He didn't cross that inch. Then, the phone rang. A single vibration on the table. He turned, answered it, voice low and controlled. But Elena caught the words that followed. She's with me. A pause. Then his tone dropped to ice. If they touch her family, I'll start a war. The line went dead. Luca's expression changed. Calm turned to rage. He looked at her and said, They're not just after you anymore. Luca didn't say another word after that call. He holstered his gun again, grabbed his coat, and started moving, more fast. Elena followed, every step heavy with questions she was too afraid to ask. The warehouse doors slammed shut behind them, echoing down the empty street. Where are we going? She demanded. To end this, he said. By killing more people? He didn't answer. Just looked at her once, eyes dark and unreadable. If I don't move now, he said, they'll take someone you love to reach me. That stopped her cold. How do they even know who I am? He exhaled slowly, rain hitting his face again. Because I told them. Her chest went tight. You what? I used your name, he said, voice low. To draw them out. To make them think you mattered enough to hurt me. Her mouth went dry. You used me as bait. Yes, he said simply. And now I have to make sure you survive it. She wanted to hit him, scream, run. But she didn't move. Something about his tone, raw, real, almost desperate, kept her there. A black SUV pulled up beside them. Luca opened the door, motioned for her to get in. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me the truth, she said. He met her stare. The truth is, I didn't mean for it to go this far. She laughed once, bitter. It always goes this far with you, doesn't it? They drove through the back streets of Brooklyn, past shuttered shops, empty bridges, and the glow of red taillights swallowed by fog. The car stopped in front of an old riverfront factory, the kind that smelled like rust and memory. Luca turned to her. Stay in the car. No. Elena, you brought me into this. You don't get to shut me out now. For a second, he looked like he might argue. Then he nodded once, resigned. Fine, but stay behind me. They moved through the doorway, the smell of gun oil and rain heavy in the air. Men waited inside, 5, maybe 6, armed, expecting him. Moretti, one of them said with a smirk, you finally brought your weakness. Elena froze. Luca's hand brushed hers. Just a brief touch, a promise. Then the world exploded into noise. Gunfire cracked through the room. Luca shoved her behind a crate, returned fire with terrifying precision. Elena covered her ears, shaking, watching the flashes light his face. A portrait of control and fury. When the shooting stopped, only silence remained. Bodies on the floor, smoke in the air. Luca stood still for a moment, breathing hard. Then he turned back to her, eyes softer than they had any right to be. You okay? She nodded, trembling. You said you wanted to end this. He walked toward her, voice low. I did. She looked past him at the men on the floor. You didn't. He followed her gaze, jaw tightening. No, he admitted. I just started something worse. After the gunfire, there was only the hum of rain leaking through the roof. The air tasted like smoke and steel. Elena stayed crouched behind the crate, too stunned to move. Luca's footsteps echoed as he walked through the mess he'd made. Methodical, deliberate, checking each body like he'd done it 100 times. When he finally reached her, his hands were steady, but his eyes weren't. He held one out. Come on, she didn't take it. You said you wanted to end this. All you did was add more names to your list. He exhaled, looked down, then said quietly, You think I wanted this? I don't know what you want anymore, Luca. Every time I think I see a piece of you, it disappears under blood. He flinched at that. Then he looked at her again. Not as the boss everyone feared, but as a man unraveling under the weight of what he'd built. I've never had to explain myself to anyone, he said. Until you. Then maybe that's your problem, she whispered. You think people are just pieces in a game you control. Something inside him snapped at that. He grabbed her wrist, not to hurt, but to stop her from walking away. His voice dropped low, rough. You think I don't care? Her heart pounded. You don't act like it. I'm trying, he said through clenched teeth. But I don't know how. For a moment, neither moved. The storm outside filled the silence between them. Then his grip loosened, and his voice broke just enough to sound human. When you showed up in my world, I didn't see a threat. I saw something clean, something untouched by all of this, and I wanted to keep it. Elena swallowed hard, her anger softening into something she didn't want to name. You can't keep people like trophies, Luca. I know, he said, but I can protect them. Her voice was barely a whisper. Even if it destroys you? He looked at her for a long moment, then said, If it's you, yeah. The confession hit harder than any gunshot. Elena felt her chest tighten, every emotion she'd been holding back clawing to the surface. She took a step closer, searching his eyes. For once he didn't hide. He let her see it. The exhaustion, the fear, the truth. She reached up, touched the side of his face, her fingers tracing the scar near his jaw. You're bleeding, she murmured. He gave a faint smile. You always notice that part first. The air between them turned still again, charged, unspoken. He leaned closer, eyes flicking between her lips and her eyes. Tell me to stop, he said. But she didn't. She couldn't. Just as the distance between them disappeared. A phone rang again, loud, relentless. Luca froze. He pulled it out, answered without looking away from her. A man's voice on the other end. Boss, they took someone. The girl's mother. We found her car empty. The silence after that sentence was unbearable. Luca's hand tightened around the phone. His other hand trembled once, just once, before he whispered, Get everyone ready. He looked at Elena. The warmth was gone. The softness. Everything, and in its place, that cold, dangerous fire again. They made their last mistake, he said. The storm never stopped that night. It followed them, like the city itself refused to wash the blood off its streets. Luca drove faster than he ever had before. Every turn sharp, every light ignored. Elena sat beside him, hands trembling, heart beating out of rhythm with the rain. She didn't ask where they were going. She already knew. Back into the dark, back into his world, the one she swore she'd never enter again. He said nothing for miles, just the engine, the thunder, and the weight of what he'd just heard. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she expected. They shouldn't have touched her. Elena looked at him, searching for the man she'd seen moments ago, the one who'd almost let himself be human. He was gone. All that remained was the ghost of the boss they whispered about in back rooms and alleyways. The car stopped in front of a mansion on the Hudson. Dozens of men waited, guns, earpieces, black coats soaked in rain. They fell silent when Luca stepped out. He didn't shout orders. He didn't need to. Elena followed, the gravel cold beneath her feet. Luca, wait, she called out. If you go in like this, there's no coming back. He turned, eyes burning through the storm. There was no back the moment they took her. She grabbed his arm, desperate. This isn't saving her. This is war. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. I told you before, Elena, he said quietly. This city only understands blood. He brushed her hand off gently and walked toward the gates. She wanted to stop him, scream, beg, anything. But she didn't move, because some part of her finally understood. The man she'd met that night in New York, the one who kissed her under the lights, the one who made her heart forget its rhythm, was both her protector and her curse. She watched as the gates opened. Lightning flashed. For a second, the world turned white. Then came the noise, gunfire, shouting, chaos. She pressed her palms to her ears, eyes shut tight, until it all stopped. Silence. Only the rain again. Footsteps approached. When she opened her eyes, Luca stood in the doorway, drenched, breath heavy, eyes unreadable. He didn't say if her mother was safe. He didn't have to. The blood on his sleeve told her enough. Elena took a step forward, voice trembling. What did you do? He didn't answer. He just looked at her. The rain dripping down his face, the city's glow flickering behind him, and said, They'll come for you now. All of them, she shook her head, tears blending with the storm. You don't get to decide my fate. He walked closer. You were never a decision. His hand brushed her cheek, his touch softer than it had any right to be. If I lose you, there's nothing left to fight for. Before she could answer, sirens wailed in the distance. Dozens of them, red and blue lights reflected off his face. Luca, she whispered. He smiled, and a small broken thing. It's too late. He stepped back into the shadows as the police lights closed in, and just like that, he was gone. Elena stood there, soaked, shaking, the world closing in around her. Her heart still beating to the rhythm of his name. Then her voice, quiet, raw, like a secret meant for no one but herself. This isn't the end. Not yet. Subscribe for part 2, if you want to know what happens when love turns into war.